What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another FPL video on the channel. And in today's one we are going to be rating your FPL draft, so make sure you guys do smash a like on the video. But with that being said, let's just get straight into it. And first things first, we do have a team sent in by Andrew. Now it is actually a Salah but no Haaland draft. As you guys can see on your screens, he's playing a 3-4-3. Up front he's got João Pedro, Beto and Dominic Solanke. In midfield he's got Salah, Ndai, Palmer and Saka, and then a back three of Konza, Van der Ven, Virgil van Dijk and then Raya in goal. So look, first things first, I have to be honest with you, Andrew. Double Everton attack absolutely stinks. Ilman and Dye and Beto, one of them has to go, bruv. It's simple as that. And to be honest with you, I'd say Beto is the one that has to go. And Dye, we know, is at least going to start. But Beto, I just don't know if there is that guarantee, right? I don't know if there is that guarantee. And to be honest with you, even if he was guaranteed to start, I still wouldn't be going double Everton attack. Everton are not some sort of attacking high goal scoring team where you would want to own two of their attackers. So for me, one of them has to go, and that person that has to go is Beto, right? Everton also have just signed a new striker, Thierry Berry. So there is definitely going to be, well, I would assume there's going to be some sort of rotation there, and Beto probably won't be playing 90 minutes every game, right? So for me, I wouldn't be going anywhere near Beto at 5.5. I'd rather potentially maybe pick a 5.5 midfielder instead. So I can see you've got Ramsey on the bench for 4.5. Maybe you can downgrade Beto to a 4.5. Maybe someone like Obi from Manchester United, and then use that money to upgrade Ramsey to someone like Anderson, for example, who seems to be quite good for defensive contributions. That's definitely a change I would make. But yeah, for me, as I said, double Everton attack absolutely stinks. What are we doing here, bro? One of them has to go. So simple as that. Now, João Pedro is another one, in my opinion, that just simply has to go. I'm going to be honest, I don't understand why on earth is João Pedro the highest owned player in the game at the moment, because for me, I think he's being massively overhyped, and I just don't understand why, right? I understand that in the FA Cup, yes, he performed well, he scored goals for Chelsea, but there is no guarantee there with João Pedro in terms of starting every week, in terms of getting 90 minutes. And to be honest with you guys, I really do think João Pedro as an FPL asset has got worse. I think he's got worse, right? At Brighton, at least you knew he was going to start week in, week out. At least at Brighton, he got 90 minutes every game. At least at Brighton, he was on penalties. But now at Chelsea, he doesn't have the penalties. There's definitely going to be rotation there, and he's not a 90-minute man anymore. So for me, I don't really understand this João Pedro hype. Chelsea have so much attacking depth, and of course, João Pedro is directly competing with Liam Delap. Now, do we think Liam Delap is just going to sit on the bench and rot away every single week on the bench and not get any starts and not get any minutes? Absolutely not. Delap will get some starts. Delap will get some minutes, especially when Chelsea start their Champions League campaign, right? When Chelsea are playing midweek and on the weekend, I guarantee you there'll be rotation there. I guarantee you Delap will get some starts in the Premier League over João Pedro. So listen, for me, I just think it is too risky to go João Pedro at the moment. He doesn't have that security in minutes that he once had at Brighton. And that's why I also believe he is a worse FPL asset. That's just my opinion, right? You guys already know I'm no expert, but that is just my opinion. So for me, I think João Pedro is being massively overhyped, and I would be looking to avoid him, man. I would definitely swap him out, as I said, for someone like Chris Wood, for example. But yeah, look, I like the Solanke pick. You guys know my thoughts on Solanke if you have been watching the channel. I think there is good, serious potential there with him playing under Thomas Frank. So I do like that pick that you've got there. Salah, Palmer, Saka, I love it a lot, especially the Saka pick. It does mean that in game week 2 you are covered for captaincy because Saka plays at home against Leeds, so I do like that a lot. Now in defense, right, I actually think this defense is pretty decent. Now, you've also got Wan-Bissaka on the bench. I think, look, Virgil van Dijk, big Virg, definitely one of the best centre-back options in the game, so fair play on that pick. I think, look, when you combine clean sheet potential with also defensive contributions potential, I think Van Dijk as an FPL asset is going to be fantastic this season. So yeah, I do like that pick a lot. Of course, Liverpool's opening fixtures, like to start the season, maybe the first 3 games aren't necessarily ideal, but in terms of just a long-term sit and forget hold, I like Virgil van Dijk a lot. Van der Ven I like as well because of the fixtures that Spurs have, and the same goes for Konza. I think Aston Villa and Spurs really do have some nice long-term fixtures. So yeah, I actually like that defense. The only issue I've got is David Raya in goal. Me personally, I would not be spending 5.5 million on David Raya, when you look at the opening fixtures that Arsenal do have, I'd much rather spend 5 million on maybe someone like Sells or someone like Sanchez, because look, Chelsea and Nottingham Forest, not only are they good defensive teams, but they've got fantastic opening fixtures to start the season. So for me, I would definitely free up some funds, downgrade Raya to Sanchez or either Sells, and then use the money to reinvest elsewhere. Maybe you can pick up another 4.5 defender. So what you could do is downgrade Raya to someone like Sanchez or Sells, and then upgrade Walker, who you've got on the bench, to another 4.5 defender, like someone like Chris Richards from Crystal Palace, who's got good clean sheet potential, but also is really, really good for defensive contributions. So yeah, there's some of the changes that I would make to this team. But overall, it's got potential. The team has got potential. I think it just needs a few tweaks. Like, as I said, double Everton attack is crazy work, bro. I'm not going to lie. I would not be going for double Everton attack. That is far too much for me. But yeah, as I said, overall, the core of the team is pretty decent. Just a few tweaks I would make. So yeah, considering you've got, you know, Salah, Saka, Palmer in there, man, it is pretty strong. I do like this team as a whole. So yeah, big up yourself, Andrew. Thank you so much for sending in your team. Out of 10, if I was to give it a rating, I think I'd go for like 7.5. As I said, I think there is potential there. Just a few more changes need to be made. So a 7 is 7.5. That's the score I would give this team. But with that being said, let's have a look at another draft. All right, guys. So next up, we do have a team sent in by Oki. I hope I did pronounce that right, by the way. Sorry if I didn't. But with that being said, as you guys can see, this is the team we do have here. And it is actually a Haaland but no Salah draft, right? So again, it is a 3-4-3. Now, as you guys can see, he's got Haaland, Solanke, Watkins as the forward line. I absolutely love that, by the way. In midfielder is Palmer, Ismaila Sarr, Florian Wirtz and Iliman Ndiaye, and then a back three of De Kuyper, Murillo, Tarkowski, and then Sanchez in goal. On the bench, he's got Richards, Esteve, and Andre Santos from Chelsea. Now, first things first, I want to mention what I absolutely love about this team, and that is the front three, right? I absolutely love it, guys. More than you can believe. The big man, the robot, the machine, Erling Haaland. Dominic Solanke as well, who's got massive, massive potential in my opinion, and Ollie Watkins. I love that front three. It's actually the current front three I've got myself. And I want to start off by talking about Erling Haaland quickly. I feel like he's being a bit underappreciated right now as an FPL asset. I feel like people are slightly overlooking him, right? I think, yes, Haaland didn't perform to the best of his abilities last season, but let's not pretend like Erling Haaland is not a bona fide world-class elite number 9 who guarantees goals, who scores goals for fun. That's what Erling Haaland is. And when I checked his ownership, I was actually quite surprised. I'm not gonna lie, right? He's only got 18.5% ownership at the moment. So yeah, as I said, bro, I think he is being massively underappreciated and overlooked. I have full faith in Erling Haaland, right? Because as I said, he is one of the best number 9s in world football. So yeah, I love the Erling Haaland pick, man. I think it's a fantastic option. Everyone's acting like Haaland is a scrub. Everyone's acting like Haaland is a bum. No, he's not. No, he is not, right? He guarantees goals. That's what he does. So, yeah, I love the front three, man. I think Solanke as well, because of the fixtures that Spurs have, him playing under Thomas Frank, he's got serious potential, man. As I said in a lot of my recent videos, we've seen Thomas Frank get the best out of number 9s in the Premier League. So, at 7.5 million, right, I do think Solanke is a very, very good option, man. Because, look, if players like Wissa, you know, Ivan Toney can score multiple goals in the Premier League for Brentford, even Kevin Schade, for example, then I do believe and have full faith that Solanke can sort of replicate their form. And look, Solanke's also scored, you know, 19 goals in the Premier League a couple seasons ago with Bournemouth as well. So yeah, look, I think there's good potential there with Solanke. And Ollie Watkins, I think the fixtures for Aston Villa, absolutely fantastic. Really, really good long-term fixtures, and that's why I like Ollie Watkins as a pick. If he stays at Villa, we know, you know, like Ollie Watkins, not much needs to be said. We know what he can do. He's Premier League proven. And you know what? He doesn't really have much competition at the moment, right? Because there is no more John Duran, there is no Marcus Rashford to take minutes away from Ollie Watkins. So as it stands, as long as Villa don't really sign anyone as a massive threat to Ollie Watkins, then it looks like he'll be very, very good for minutes as well. So yeah, man, absolutely love that front three. Now in midfield, Cole Palmer, I like the fixtures are there for Chelsea, so fair play. Ismaila Sarr, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure how I feel about Ismaila Sarr. I think if you could sort of rotate him in and out of your team, then it would be decent. But based off what your bench is looking like at the moment, Sarr would be starting every single week. And I don't think Sarr is that great of an option if you're going to be starting him every single week. Purely because the fixtures for Crystal Palace, they're not that great. You know, if game week 1 is Chelsea away, that's pretty tough. Then in game week 2 is Forest at home. and then it's Villa away in game week 3. From game week 4, the fixtures do get better, but the opening 3 is not really ideal. I mean, Sunderland at home in 4, you know, West Ham away in 5 is nice. But look, I think with Ismaila Sarr, because he's 6.5, right, it does mean that you are really, really close to being able to get Morgan Rogers. And in your team, of course, you don't have Morgan Rogers. So for me, I would definitely find a way to try and get Morgan Rogers in this team. And I think the way you potentially do that, right, could be to downgrade Iliman Ndiaye to someone like Dwight McNeil at 6 million and then use the extra 0.5 to upgrade Sarr to Morgan Rogers. That's definitely something I would consider, if I'm being totally honest with you. You might disagree with me, fair enough, but I actually think between Iliman Ndiaye and Dwight McNeil, there isn't really much to separate them, in my personal opinion. You know, last season, Dwight McNeil got 4 goals, 8 assists in just 12 Premier League starts, whereas Iliman Ndiaye got 9 goals, some of those including penalties, in 29 starts. So the rate of returns last season for Dwight McNeil was a lot better than Ndiaye, and it's why I've explained in some of my previous videos that I do sort of slightly prefer Dwight McNeil, especially when you factor in that he is 0.5 cheaper, and I think that 0.5 can go a long way. So for me, I would definitely go for that Aston Villa double up with Rodgers and Watkins, right, because the fixtures are really, really good. And you know what, with Aston Villa, when they score a goal, it's always usually from either Watkins or Rodgers, right? Like, they're always involved in the goals and assists for Aston Villa. So I think because they got such good fixtures, that double up in attack will be worth it. So yeah, I personally would downgrade Ndiaye to maybe a McNeil, or even downgrade Ndiaye to even further to someone at 5.5. Maybe you can go for Anderson again, because as I explained, the fixtures are good for Forest and he's really, really good for defensive contributions. You know, him and Caicedo were at the top 2 last season for defensive contribution points. So yeah, you could even downgrade Ndiaye to Anderson at 5.5 and then upgrade Sarr to Rodgers, and then you'd even have an extra 0.5 million in the bank to play around with as well. I mean, what you could do is downgrade Ndiaye to Anderson, Sarr goes up to Rodgers, and then maybe upgrade Tarkowski to Virgil van Dijk, for example. That is something you can do. But yeah, I would definitely find a way to get Rodgers in the team. I think Rodgers is going to be a really, really good asset to start the season. That is my honest prediction. Now, Florian Wirtz in there is interesting. I'm still on the side of, like, I don't know if it's best to avoid new signings to the Premier League just to see how they adjust, especially specifically with Florian Wirtz. Liverpool don't have the easiest start to the season in terms of their fixtures. So although Wirtz does have a good game week 1 fixture, I don't know if he's going to be worth picking as an FPL asset, because he's still adjusting to the league and the opening fixtures that Liverpool have aren't easy at all. So I do wonder if maybe it could be worth going for someone else. But, you know, there is no Mohamed Salah in this draft, so maybe you've decided to go Wirtz to sort of try and cover Salah in a way. But yeah, I'm not too sure how I feel about that Wirtz pick. I'm a little bit 50-50 with that. But look, in terms of the defence, I do like it a lot. Whether you decide to upgrade Tarkowski or not, I think he's a good pick because the fixtures are good for Everton. But Tarkowski and Murillo are absolutely sensational. Absolutely sensational for defensive contribution points, right? As you guys can see here on your screens, in terms of defensive contributions made last season, you can see here that Murillo and Tarkowski are the top 2 defenders, right? So they both play for teams that are good for clean sheets, but also they're good individual players for defensive contributions, which is absolutely fantastic, and I love that a lot about your defense. So you could essentially have Tarkowski and Murillo there. It's just long-term set and forget holds. They never really need to come out your team unless they get injured. They never really need to go on the bench because there's always that potential of getting defensive contributions. So yeah, for me, I think it's really, really good that you've got those 2 at the back there. Yeah, if I had to give it a rating out of 10 right now, I'd say 7.5. Yeah, that's my opinion. Anyway, let's move on to the next draft. So next up, we do have a team sent in by FPL Sam Cam. So once again, thank you so much for sending in your team. And it is actually a bench boost game week 1 team, right? And he actually did say before he did have Salah in his team, but he just wanted to get the chip out the way. And I can completely understand it, because if I'm being honest, man, the bench boost chip is the most frustrating chip in this game. And I really do want to start a petition to get rid of this chip, bro. It is the most annoying chip in the game, and I just, oh my days, bro, the frustration is causing me right now. I keep switching between wanting to bench boost early but then also wanting to save it. It is genuinely so frustrating, and to be honest with you, it's not even worth all the stress. It's not even worth all the stress. I'm stressing over playing an extra 2 defenders, 1 extra midfielder and an extra goalkeeper, right? I'm probably only going to get about 10 points from my bench anyway. What is the point stressing about this chip? But honestly, yeah, guys, I can't stand the bench boost chip, if I'm being totally honest. But anyway, look, let's have a look at the team. As you guys can see, it's a 3-4-3, but obviously it's a bench boost, so yeah, it doesn't really matter who's in the starting 11. But yeah, on the bench, he's got Verbruggen, Caicedo, Wan-Bissaka and De Kuiper, the front three of Haaland, Welbeck, Solanke, Palmer, Wirtz, Kudus and then Dyer midfield. And then for the defence, he's gone for Gabriel, Ait-Nouri, Udogie and Kelleher in goal. So look, of course, he's built a well-rounded squad, which is pretty, needed for a bench boost, right, if we're being honest. So yeah, no Salah in there, but Haaland in there, of course, and Palmer. So I think the front three, Haaland, Welbeck and Solanke. I like Haaland, I like Solanke. A little bit unsure on Welbeck, but look, for a game week 1 bench boost, I don't think it's too bad. I think at his price point, 6.5 million, isn't a bad pick. I mean, isn't too bad considering he was playing against Fulham at home. So yeah, I do think that is pretty decent. I think in midfield, Kudus I like, Palmer I like. Wirtz on a game week 1 bench boost, I do understand the thinking behind it, so I do kind of like it on that strategy. And then Ilman and Dyer in there as well at 6.5 million playing against Leeds away. On the bench, he's gone for Caicedo at 5.5. Now, Caicedo is really, really good for defensive contributions. I think, look, your defense as well, really, really good, especially for a game week 1. Actually, no, I take it back. The defense is decent, but I think it could improve. And now I like Wan-Bissaka, I like De Kuiper for a game week 1 bench boost. I like Udogie, but for the 2-6 million options that you've gone for, Gabriel and Ait-Nouri, I personally would not be going for those, especially on a game week 1 bench boost. I think City still defensively, I think there's a lot of question marks around them. Yes, Ait-Nouri has that attacking threat, and to be honest with you, I think that's all he has. I don't really think the signing of Ait-Nouri has improved City's defence. I still have a feeling they're going to be quite weaker at the back compared to the other sort of, teams like Liverpool and Arsenal, and maybe even Chelsea. Yeah, so for me, I think, look, Wolves away for Ait-Nouri, it's okay, but I think you can get better, right? At 6 million, I think, Cucurella is a better option. I even think at 5.5, Murillo is a much better option than Ait-Nouri, especially with his game week 1 fixture. The clean sheet potential is there. The defensive contribution points potential is there. So for me, Ait-Nouri, I would get rid of, but also Gabriel, right? When you look at the fixtures, not only in game week 1, Man United away from home isn't really ideal, but after that, the fixtures for Arsenal, they're not the best, especially from a defensive point of view. So for me, if I'm going to be bench boosting in game week 1 as well, I wouldn't be going for Gabriel. I wouldn't be going for Ait-Nouri. Personally, I'd look to maybe get Murillo in there. So you could downgrade Gabriel to Murillo, and then maybe you can swap out Ait-Nouri for Virgil van Dijk, for example. And then that would actually give you enough money. That would leave you with 0.5 in the bank. And then you'd be able to upgrade Kelleher, right, to someone like Sanchez from Chelsea. And I think overall that improves your defence a lot. You get Sanchez in goal from Chelsea. You've then got Murillo in there instead of Gabriel against Brentford at home. And then you've got Virgil van Dijk against Bournemouth at home instead of Ait-Nouri. I prefer those three over the current picks you've got in your team. And I think Kelleher, I don't really like as a pick. He will probably get a relatively high amount of saves, but I just think the clean sheet potential is not there for Brentford. As I said, they've lost so many players. They've lost their manager. They're potentially going to use Johan Wissa as well, on top of already losing Brian Obama, Christian Norgard, and of course Thomas Frank, and even their goalkeeper as well. I mean, Kelleher is a good goalkeeper, but they still, lost their goalkeeper who they were used to playing with. So yeah, there's a lot of changes happening at Brentford, and I do expect a massive drop off. So I don't really like the Kelleher pick. So as I said, I would definitely make those changes. But in terms of a rating I would give to this team, I think I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. Right, and again, if you make those changes I personally think are better for your team, then I'll probably upgrade it to an 8. But yeah, once again, I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think I've given 7.5 to every draft I've seen. But yeah, honestly, I think, as I said, yeah, 7.5 out of 10. That's personally what I would go for with this team. All right, guys, so for the final team, we do have a no Haaland and no Salah draft, and it was sent in on Twitter by Fantasy DeVito. So once again, thank you so much for sending in your team. Now, as you guys can see, he's playing a 3-5-2, and for the 2 forwards, he's gone for Solanke and Ollie Watkins, and then a midfield 5 of Bruno Fernandes, Cole Palmer, Ismaila Sarr, Ndiaye and Saka, and then a back 3 of Virgil van Dijk, Tarkowski, Murillo, and then in goal he's gone for Sells, and on the bench he's got Strand Larsen and Richard and Esteve. So you guys can see it's a pretty well-rounded squad, and this is what a no Haaland and no Salah draft allows you to do. In terms of the front two, I like a lot Solanke and Ollie Watkins. you guys already know my thoughts on those two. I think they're really, really good options. Both good long-term, pretty much set and forget holds. So yeah, really, really happy with those two up front. Now, I want to quickly skip the midfield for a second. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this defense, because I think this defense is absolutely ridiculous, right? I think it's a fantastic, fantastic defense. And all I can say is how greedy of you to include Virgil van Dijk, Tarkowski and Murillo, and then even Sells in goal. I think the potential that this defense has is very, very good, and that's mainly because you've got sort of three long-term set and forget defender picks that are good for clean sheets, but also really, really good for the defensive contribution points. And I think this defense is just, yeah, absolutely ridiculous. So fair play on that. I would expect that defense to do really, really well in the long term. So you've even got Chris Richards there on the bench as well, who's pretty decent for clean sheets and defensive contribution points as well. But yeah, I think that defense is really, really good. Now, in terms of the midfield, right? Palmer, Saka, I like. You guys know why I like Palmer. You know, the long-term features are good. Saka in game week 2, standout captain option, and also just genuinely a reliable, consistent player that can return in any game. Now, Bruno Fernandes, right? Coming in at a price of 9 million, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if he's going to be worth picking. And yes, I know he scored a brace. He scored 2 goals in our preseason game against West Ham. However, he was playing for, well, one of them was a penalty, which is fair enough, because that is part of the reason that, you know, that is part of the appeal to picking Bruno Fernandes, is the fact that he is on penalties. But look, in terms of Bruno Fernandes, I think he'll be a slightly I just don't think he'll be a great option, and that's because he won't be playing in the 10 roles in our system, right? He'll most likely be playing as part of the 2 midfielders, probably next to someone like Ugarte or Casemiro. We're going to have Brian Mbeumo, Mateus Cunha playing in those 10 roles in a more advanced role in the team, right? So I think Bruno Fernandes will be slightly deeper, and I know that some of you guys will say, well, that could potentially be a good thing, because maybe that does increase his chance of making defensive contributions. And look, Bruno Fernandes isn't necessarily bad for defensive contributions, but I just think we always pick Bruno Fernandes because of his goals and assists, and I think because he's going to be playing deeper, we're going to see a reduction in the amount of goals and assists he does get. Now, for me, when you're spending 9 million, right, that is at the premium price. When you're spending that amount of money on an asset, 9 million, for me, you have to be getting goals and assists. That's what, like, I think the defensive contribution points are good for the cheaper assets, for your 5 million defenders, for your 5.5 million midfielders. Fair enough. But when I'm spending 9 million on an FPL asset, I want goals, I want assists. I'm not really too bothered on the defensive contributions. And for me, I think, as I said, we're going to see a reduction in goals and assists with Bruno Fernandes. So for me, I don't think he is going to be a good option. And also, guys, the fixtures that we have, that Manchester United have, aren't the greatest. Right, I think, again, you could rotate Bruno Fernandes in and out of the team, but again, if you're spending 9 million on a player, I don't really think you want to be using them as a rotational piece. If I'm being totally honest, I think that is just too much to spend on someone that's going to come in and out of your team. So for me, I personally would prefer someone like Morgan Rogers. I think Morgan Rogers at 7 million is a lot better. And I think potentially I would rather go for maybe downgrading Fernandes to Rogers. That gives you an extra 2 million to spend. And then maybe what you could do is upgrade Saar to Florian Wirtz, because Saar is 6.5, Wirtz is 8.5. So that makes up the difference between Bruno Fernandes and Morgan Rogers. So I think the combination of Wirtz and Rogers is a lot better than Bruno Fernandes and Ismaila Sarr, in my opinion. So yeah, they're probably the only changes that I would make with this team. I think Strand Larsen is a pretty good pick, especially with because you can use them as a rotational piece. I think the fixtures that Wolves have to start the season are actually pretty decent. So I think, you know, Strand Larsen also potentially is on penalties. That does, make his appeal a lot better. So I think he's actually a pretty decent option you got there. So yeah, for me, I think the only really concern I've got is Bruno Fernandes and Ismaila Sarr. I don't really like Ismaila Sarr as a pick, if I'm being totally honest. So I think, as I said, the combination of Rogers and Wirtz is a lot better than Sarr and Bruno Fernandes. That is just my personal opinion. I don't really want to ramble on for too long. So yeah, man, thank you so much for sending in the draft. Out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7.5. I know I think I've given every team a 7.5 out of 10, but yeah, that's just my opinion. There's so many different ways to play this game. There's so many different combinations. But yeah, that's just my opinion. I'm going to give it a 7.5. I know it might be boring. I've given every team the same rating, but it is what it is. Thank you so much for sending in your team. Well, thank you so much to everyone in this video for sending in their teams. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. That is going to be it. If you guys want to see another episode of rating your teams, then make sure you guys do smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. It's been your boy FPL Ryan, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. But until then, I'm out. Peace.